Now let's go ahead and talk about, let's see what the next tool is here. Oh yes, Dodge, Burn, let's try that again in English. Dodge, Burn, and Sponge tool. Okay, these are, I think, and I'm actually kind of guessing here, so feel free to email me if you know differently, but I think these are actual terms from the days of photography, pre-digital photography, I mean, when people had to use a darkroom and chemicals to develop pictures. If you're a traditional photographer, I'd love to know whether I'm right or wrong about that, so please drop me an email about that. So let's go ahead and do the Dodge tool. And in short, that makes things lighter. You can either make shadows, midtones, or highlights lighter. A lot of tools, well, several tools, I should say, use this distinction up there in their control bar. Shadows are the pixels that are really dark. Midtones are the ones that are, obviously in the middle somewhere. And highlights are the very light tones. So, for example, if I wanted to say the sun itself would be considered mostly made up of highlight pixels. Um, Midtones would be probably somewhere around here, and then shadows would obviously be somewhere around the beach or in the shadow of the waves. Let's just go ahead and click on shadows and see what happens. See how that's lightening up a little bit, the shadows there themselves. Let's go ahead down here and do that to the beach. And now let's go to the midtones and see what happens. See, it's making the midtones lighter, much more of an obvious effect there. And then the highlights, well, making light pixels lighter will probably wind up in just pure white. So yeah, that's pretty much what we're getting there. So I'm just going to go ahead and just go all the way back up to here and hit paste. No, I'm not. Well, you know what? I just totally messed that up. I got rid of the picture I needed. So let's just go back over to here, like I should have done in the first place. And now let's go ahead and talk about the burn tool. Burn tool is the exact opposite of the dodge tool. So here I'll try to make the highlights lighter, maybe turn those black. And it's not working too well. Now it's starting to work. But I'd have to click on it a bazillion times, as you can see over here, to get it back to black or down to black. So now let's switch it to midtones. I think you get the idea. Notice how that's increasing the saturation. Saturation is just how vibrant the color is, not necessarily how bright or how dark, but how intense the colors are. Notice how that became a much richer reds and oranges back there. So, and then lightning using the dodge tool has the exact opposite effect. It tends to desaturate colors. So let me just run back up here to, or better yet, I just go to File, Revert, or how to use a mouse. And that brings us back to Open. Okay, so that's, and then last but not least, the sponge tool either saturates or desaturates. And I was just talking about those, so let me go ahead and show you those in action here. And again, same brush settings as the brush tool itself. You can go ahead and mess with that to your heart's content. But now I'm going to desaturate. Desaturate basically means to take the color out. I've got it set up to 100%, so if I keep doing this, eventually I'm going to get a pure black and white picture. So I'm just holding down with the left mouse button, and I'm just moving back and forth to my heart's content. Then I'm doing it again. If I keep doing this, eventually I will get a full black and white picture. Or I can go back up to here, and now I'm going to do saturate. This will be fun. Make it very vibrant. And that's the difference between saturation and desaturation explained. So, yeah, now it's looking like something out of an 80s movie poster. Okay, so there you have those tools. And I'm going to hold off on the pen tool until a little bit later because we're going to cover that for the shapes. But that pretty much covers the basics of the tools except for some of the advanced ones like the pen tool and the type tool. And through that all, we've also gone over most of the windows. Going to have several videos on layers and so forth. When I talk about the pen tools, I'll be talking about the paths window as well, because those two are connected together. History, that just shows you a list of everything that you've done, and you can click on a state to go back to the way it was at that point. Also used in the history brush. Character and paragraph, we'll talk about that when we go to the type tool, and we talk about swatches and color. So I hope that that is enough to get you started with messing around. Also, don't forget your layers. We talked about those as well. You should know the basics of how to do layers, although I'll be talking about those in depth in later videos. Channels, we're not going to get to for a while, so don't worry about that. Not really needed just yet, but when we start going to transparencies and alpha masks for target files, for texture maps, then it'll become a little bit more necessary, but not for right now. So go ahead and be studying these, and more than anything else, not only study them, but go along, fire up Photoshop and go along these lectures as you're watching them in Photoshop, and work on Photoshop yourself, because just watching these videos by themselves without actually spending time yourself practicing in Photoshop would, it would almost borderline be a waste of time for you, and I don't want to waste your time, and I don't want you to waste your time either by just watching the videos and not practicing in Photoshop yourself. So I'll leave you with that. Be watching these videos, be creating files in Photoshop, opening up images in Photoshop. Maybe you went on vacation somewhere else yourself, or whatever, a selfie, whatever. Just find some pictures and mess with them to practice, to get a feel for how these things work, and then experiment as well. Most of what I learned from Photoshop, I learned the basics in like a day, and then the rest I just pretty much improvised. And this was back in the early days of the internet, and this was before YouTube. And it's very hard to break Photoshop, so don't be afraid to try stuff just to see what happens as well. And in the meantime, I'll be working on some more of these videos for you, and I'll have them up real soon.